All right. Welcome to the Pixel Opinions review of X-Men Apocalypse. Today you get a 3/4 review because we're down Derek.
Yes! Down Derek!
That would be 3/4, Andrew. Nailed it.
All right. I'm sorry I said it already. So let's just jump into the movie. I don't want to talk first because I am the blatant X-Men fan biased here. So guys, what did you think? This is the third movie in the... I don't know. Can you call it a reboot series? Because
it's kind of like its own standalone trilogy at this point. Like, it has some, connections there, especially with, like, Days of Future Past.
So we'll call it the third movie in the second trilogy.
They kind of got rid of those connections, though, with Days of Future Past.
There was a lot that was retconned,
right?
Yeah. I mean, it gets really confusing because, unfortunately, time travel does that, right?
Okay. But anyways, regardless of what you would label this movie... What did you guys think? Oh, before we get into it, there is no way, being an X-Men fan, that I can do this without spoilers. So, anybody who's watching, it's not a chance that there's going to be spoilers. There will be spoilers. So, you have been warned.
I think my real comment here is, third movies suck.
Third movies do suck. It definitely isn't as bad as the first trilogy.
No, not nearly as bad as that.
Not even close.
I will agree that it's not as bad as The Last Stand, but it is, in my opinion, much like The Last Stand, it's the worst of this trilogy.
Definitely.
But again, it's tough to compare. First Class and Days of Future Past set the bar fairly high.
Yep.
But let's not review it in comparison to those two. How was this movie? I mean, you guys are not as big X-Men fans. How did you feel just about watching an action movie that happened to star the X-Men?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good.
Overall, I thought the action was done really well. Definitely, they spent a little bit of time on some of the X-Men that may not have been Apocalypse, where this movie was about Apocalypse. I felt that it should have been more...
This movie was not about Apocalypse.
It really wasn't. Like, I feel that they should have really dedicated a little more time to how scary he is. He is the end of the world. He should be the one ending the world.
Yeah, that is definitely the main gripe I have with it, is that Apocalypse not only didn't have a whole lot of screen time as a villain, he wasn't very threatening.
He really didn't seem very threatening. No, like the coolest part of him that I found was actually the part where he was in the mindscape with Xavier. I thought that was really neat. It was really cool kind of thing that they did. And then of course, with Phoenix showing up in there. But that was it. Like, other than that, he just wasn't as intimidating.
No, he was pathetic.
I'm going to try and stay away from the lore just now.
Okay.
It'll be impossible for me to do in the long run. However, I feel that I agree with you guys. This movie lacked focus. For a movie called Apocalypse, there was so much more focus put on Magneto.
Yes.
And Apocalypse has always recruited his 4 Horsemen of Apocalypse, who the roster has changed many, many a times. There's been notable characters like even Gambit and Archangel was always was always considered one of them at some point.
Yep.
He's had... the roster. Just say that the 4 that he picked for the Apocalypse isn't right. It doesn't matter because that's something like saying the X-Men roster has changed. It's constantly changing. My biggest issue is he spent a lot of time recruiting his Apocalypse, his four Horsemen.
Yeah.
And then they didn't do anything. It really came down to Magneto. And almost the pivotal turning point in the conflict was Magneto.
Yeah. If it wasn't for him... It would have gone their way.
Yes, and to me, that's the biggest issue. There was a lack of focus. There was scenes that were thrown in there simply for the purpose of having cameos. The entire scene in Stryker Island harkens to that, setting up, that's more there to set up a cameo and a sequel or another movie, Wolverine 3, than actually help this storyline. This storyline seemed to, from a plot standpoint, move very poorly in execution. We have a quick recruiting.
Yeah.
We have a quick conflict and a cameo scene, and then we end it.
I was going to use the words hot mess, because that's how I felt when I watched it. Exactly what you said. It just didn't have the focus. The Horsemen are supposed to be... They're supposed to be pretty cool, and realistically, like, other than the kind of, metalish song that they had going when they introduced Archangel, like, it just felt like they were kind of lame.
I think the big problem with the entire movie was that the subplots, Wolverine and Magneto, vastly took focus away from the actual plot.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. When you have a movie titled Apocalypse, he should be a focus in the narrative. And yes, he was the catalyst that moved it along. He's the one that recruited the people.
Yeah.
He's the one that kind of like, I guess, recruited Magneto. But that was it, right? After that, and I mean, I'm sorry, but aside from Magneto, you know, if you're going to do a movie called Apocalypse, either do just Apocalypse or don't, like, there was no need for the Horsemen.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that movie could have been just Magneto as a villain again and not have Apocalypse because Storm didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Archangel was an awesome transition scene when he got the metal wings, which was
Pretty cool.
pretty lore worthy as well. And Psylocke, which, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm a warm-blooded male. The idea of Olivia Munn in a purple swimsuit has absolutely no issues with me. She's gorgeous. But 90% of her screen time was just standing in the background when they were a group.
She didn't do anything.
Amanda mentioned it. Your girlfriend mentioned it. She had like 3 lines in the movie.
Yeah.
And 1 fight scene at the end when like everybody was fighting. And it just seems like, again, you're diluting the focus on specific characters to have a quantity of characters.
Yeah.
But to have that quantity, like Archangel shows up in the movie, gets his ass kicked by Nightcrawler, gets recruited by Apocalypse, gets metal wings, just to get his ass kicked by Nightcrawler. It's like,
When did Nightcrawler get so good compared to him, you know? Like,
what are you talking about? I'm not going to get too far into lore, but Nightcrawler is amazing. He even led Excalibur for a long period of time.
Yeah.
However, what I mean, though, is just the individual roles are diluted. They're dumbed down for the purpose of having more X-Men, rather than maybe focusing on a smaller group of villains, like just, again, if Magneto was just the villain a second time around, but actually fully developing them by engrossing the storyline, by focusing on it, rather than just like, oh, hey, cool, we got some cool special effects for this fight scene because we added this character, but otherwise this character doesn't need to be there.
well, yeah, like, I mean, it would have been nice to have a little bit better backstory for each of them if they were going to do that. I mean, we got, like, a taste of Storm's, and hers was the most well thought out. Everyone else's, it was like, hey, we got this guy, he fights, he's got wings. Okay, let's give him metal wings. Like, that was it. We didn't learn anything about who he was, what his motives are, anything.
Well, I mean, Storm, you know, that storyline was pulled from the lore, not with Apocalypse, but Shadow King.
Yep.
You know, Angel has always, you know, Angel always became Archangel because of Apocalypse. I didn't get the Psylocke thing, but, you know, again, I know why she was there. They needed sex appeal in the movie, right?
Yep.
But let's focus on that. Like, the reason that they did it was for, again, you want to have specific special effects. You got Storm in there, you can use, like, lightning strikes. You got Archangel in there, you can have that sweet transformation to the metal wings. You got Psylocke there, you can use her psionic blades. But if we're going to talk about special effects, Quicksilver.
Easily the Quicksilver scene is the best scene in the movie. Like, there's no question about that one.
I actually really liked it. And more because of the comedy than anything. I mean, to me, that is Quicksilver. I just like that style of how they did it. He's hilarious, and he actually brings up this value of the movie to me.
It was such a well choreographed scene. On top of the special effects and the humor, like just the way everything went together in the scene was just very well thought out. And I only wish that the rest of the movie was thought out that well.
But that's what I mean, and no, I can't give it enough credit. You know, we've been doing a lot of speedsters in media lately with the Flash and Quicksilver in the Avengers movies.
Yep.
And most of them take the approach of showing him go really fast, where this one they're going and showing him kind of at regular speed, but slowing the world down to give you kind of like a different perspective of how he's seeing it.
Yeah.
And that scene was fantastic, and you can't give them enough special effects. Like, even the one fight scene, Psylocke versus Beast, which is like the only reason she was in there.
Yeah.
You know, the special effects were fantastic with her psionic blades. The Quicksilver scene was fantastic. The Wolverine cameo, spoiler, was a great scene. But it seems like, and that's part of the reason that I think this movie is unfocused, is that they sacrificed the story to put together a collection of these awesome scenes.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a great idea for this Quicksilver scene. Hey, we got a great idea for some special effects with Psylocke. Although we just might as well make her a horseman to have this fight scene.
Yeah.
You know, we had some great special effects with the transformation for the wings. It seems like they just put all these kind of together haphazardly and built a story around it after the fact, rather than letting some awesome scenes kind of naturally come together as a result of the plot.
Yes, and I think we saw, you know, obviously we can't really do this without comparing to the other ones, but, you know, they had a very similar scene in First Class, right? With him speeding. So,
Days of Future
was it Days of Future?
Yeah. He wasn't
in First Class.
First Class, he...
No.
Okay.
Quicksilver's not in First Class.
Okay. Either way.
In First Class, he would have been like 6.
Either way. Like, having a similar scene like that, you know, it just worked with that movie much better.
Yes. And don't get me wrong, that scene was amazing. To me, it was the highlight scene in the movie. If there is a fan out there who's not really big on X-Men, but likes, you know, special effects and CGI, you know, the Quicksilver scene in the X-Mansion is the one to see. That was the hallmark of that movie. But that's why I go back to this term unfocused.
Yeah.
There was a lot that I could enjoy about the movie. I could enjoy the fight scenes. I could enjoy the fight choreography. I could enjoy the Quicksilver scene. But the movie as a whole was just really lacking.
Yeah.
To me, it kind of seemed like they were distracted. It seemed more like they weren't trying to make a movie there. They were trying to set up for future movies by bringing all the X-Men together. Because that's really what it felt like. It felt like a big recruitment thing. Like, get Wolverine in position, get Storm in position, get Nightcrawler, etc., etc. It really felt like they were almost doing like a preview for the next movie.
I mean, also, the focus on, like, Magneto, I mean, Michael Fassbender is going to be one of their big draws, right? So,
of course.
I mean, of course they're going to give him, like, most of the screen time.
However, I think it's unfortunate that they decided that the story there was going to be kind of the same story they went for in the first two.
Yeah.
They kind of just melded the first two together and didn't really do anything all that new with them this time.
Yeah, it's like Magneto only does something when everything goes wrong around him.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. You know, you setting up for Wolverine or whatever, for example.
Yeah.
There you got, that's the 8th movie. Look, there's 7 in front of us. This is the 8th movie where Hugh Jackman is played as a Wolverine. Whether you want to divide the two trilogies together or not, the one constant is that Hugh Jackman has been Wolverine.
Yep.
So how much setup do you need to do for these characters, right?
You don't even need to mention his name anymore. You say you're making a Wolverine movie. Hey, Hugh Jackman is still ticking. Like, he's gonna be in it.
Or you do a cameo, like First Class.
But at the same time, that's not even the point, you know, because that scene, from a storyline sense, could be in there.
Yeah.
But you don't need to do it as a preparation for something else. Fit it into the larger storyline. You know, like, and same for, you know, Nightcrawler. We saw them in the second movie of the original trilogy. Storm was a prominent role in the original trilogy. Like, why are we reintroducing characters that we've just seen in movies not that long ago?
Yeah.
You know, like, even if it's separate trilogies, we're familiar with these characters. And yes, they give us a lot more backstory to Storm in this movie as it is. And, you know, there is even that one quick scene of Psylocke who walks out of the battle, you know, the final battle.
Yeah.
And she kind of has that look on her face like, I'll be back, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. You don't need to put a lot of focus on it. But the thing about the X-Men universe, and one of the reasons why it did so well in movies to begin with, is that there is so much established for it. You can't, you can throw a dart and hit like 10 different X-Men on a poster of the Marvel universe because there's so many of them already. You don't need that build up. You can just throw in characters. And that's one of the things that, again, diluted it. There's so many characters that they're trying to throw in that aren't necessary.
Especially when you're just going to drop them. Like at the end of First Class, what was the scene? It was a scene of Magneto picking up Emma Frost. Who doesn't show up in the next movie? Emma Frost. At the end of the second movie, it was a scene of, I believe, Stryker picking up Wolverine out of the sea.
Yeah.
But I could have swore Stryker had the yellow eyes, right?
Oh, so yeah, it would have been
Mystique.
Mystique, yeah.
Which wouldn't make any... Which would make the scene in 3 make no sense, right?
Well, here's the thing, and this is where I defend it because I am one of the lore junkies. I don't need it to be accurate.
Yeah.
I don't need it to stick to the lore. I just want it to be a good action movie. I want it to be something where, I'll never get an X-Men movie where I can't pick something apart about the lore.
Yeah.
I have to come to accept that. But make it just a good movie, My biggest issue with this movie, and I could go on my own on a huge tangent on the issues with lore, is that the story itself, whether you acknowledge the previous movies or the discrepancies in lore, was just lacking to begin with. You put a huge backstory into Magneto's motivation to become a villain again, but it's supposed to be Apocalypse that's the villain.
Yeah.
And then with, again, minimal motivation, he switches sides.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is the problem with it. Again, the final battle, the mind battle with Xavier, which makes no sense for Apocalypse to do a psionic battle. You just have Phoenix show up for a second, like, let's throw the whole world of the Dark Phoenix saga into this all of a sudden. In what? A quick throwaway special effect that lasted like 5 seconds.
See, I had called it at the beginning because I mean, as soon as they started the movie, I was like, Phoenix is going to be one who actually defeats Apocalypse. Like, that was just, it popped in my head. I talked to Amanda about it. It just seemed to make sense. But from the actual story that they wrote, it didn't make sense.
I kind of got that just from the commercial, because the commercial focused on Jean Grey. Right?
Fair enough. I didn't actually watch the commercial, so I wouldn't have caught that.
But you know what? I think it's fair enough. Okay, so the story's a little weird. How about as an action movie, though? I think that it was lacking as an action movie, too, probably for a lot of the same reasons we mentioned. You got these cool horsemen. You got Apocalypse, who's very cool, but there was almost no fighting.
Yeah.
Like, there was a scene at the end, but there could have been so much more before that. And it feels like they really missed out on a lot of opportunities there to make some really awesome combat.
I feel it suffers the problem that, unfortunately, like, we're starting to see a couple more superhero movies suffering this problem, but the anticlimactic kind of ending with the big boss, Like, it just feels like, okay, we hit that moment and it's kind of like the all is lost moment, and then all of a sudden they rally together and defeat the guy in like in a 5-minute sequence, and you're like, well, what happened with the rest of the movie? They should have been building up a little bit better.
Magneto didn't even fight them.
No.
You realize that? Magneto didn't even fight them.
No, so he just stopped what he's doing. That's pretty much what he did.
They focused the entire movie on Magneto and a bit on Apocalypse, and then they don't even fight Magneto. How sad is that? If you're going to make Magneto pull focus, at least make them fight him.
Actually, name how many guys even fought Apocalypse.
Quicksilver.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the very end, they kind of ganged up on him.
They kind of ganged up on him while he was fighting mentally
Magneto.
in the battle. And it's just it just makes no sense. This is becoming very negative. There's got to be something good that you can say other than the Quicksilver scene.
I still stand by, I actually did like the psionic battle, even if it's not making sense from a lore perspective. I did like it. I thought it really, for me, added to the movie.
What about the casting?
Casting was great.
Obviously it's not the first time, but I still think that, whether this is a focus on Apocalypse or Magneto, Michael Fassbender has been killing it as Magneto.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
I mean, you want to get into the issue with Magneto's backstory in the movie not making sense for the movie, but you can't take away his performance with his family, with, his reactions, still hinting at that friendship with Xavier. That was fantastic.
I thought Mystique was very good this time. She's been good the entire time, but I thought this was her best performance. Jennifer Lawrence.
I didn't feel the same as that, but
to be honest, I thought the casting in general was great. I thought the Four Horsemen were cast very well. They might not have had the greatest opportunity to show it, but I thought what we did see was great. I really liked Storm.
Oh yeah, no, Storm's casting I thought was really well done.
My biggest issue with the casting was the new X-Men, not the Apocalypse characters.
Okay.
Storm was very good. I'm not sure the actress's name. I feel bad that I don't, but she fit the role and she did a good job. Angel was limited, but he fit the role. Mm-hmm. Olivia Munn for just being there as eye
She
candy.
definitely had the look.
You know what? She's a great fit for Psylocke. It's not her fault that the movie didn't utilize the character very well.
Visually, I think the characters really looked good.
Yes.
I really liked Psylocke's Purple Blade when it came out.
Yeah, her Psyblade definitely
That looked really
great.
cool.
And the returning cast members Quicksilver was a great choice in Days of Future Past. He's a great choice now. James McAvoy as Xavier is still fantastic.
Yeah.
Beast is still fine. I personally did not like Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, and Cyclops too much.
I would have to agree with all three of those.
I was okay with Jean Grey. I mean, I thought about it at first and I was like iffy, but you know what? After watching, I was like, okay, you know what? I can let that go. I didn't find her too bad. I liked her.
I don't know.
It's kind of so-so, I'd say.
You know, like, and it's again harkening back to the original trilogy, but you know, butcher the pronunciation. Femke did such a good job as Jean Grey in the original trilogy, and I get that obviously it's a different time frame. You need a younger actor,
Yeah.
but I just don't think that there was that same passion, that same flair. Like, you know, the performance is Sophia Turner,
Yeah.
just felt really uninspired.
She seemed a bit too grim. Like she'd just seen all her family get killed or something.
Anyway, same thing with Cyclops. You know, like Cyclops was very one-dimensional. You know, I'm used to the, you know, leader type. I mean, I get that he's young,
I
but
didn't hate Cyclops enough. I'm very disappointed.
You know what? I will say, to me, Cyclops was probably the weakest, just because of, you know, he was very kind of crybaby-ish, you know? And I mean, fine, in the first movies, he was also crybaby-ish, but his character isn't that crybaby-ish in the lore.
I mean, he's coming to terms with a lot. You got to remember, this is, you know, you're used to the Cyclops who's been there,
Yeah.
who's learned it, who's seen the worst part of humans versus mutants. This is a young, naive high schooler who's just been thrust upon the powers. But again, just like Sophia Turner's performance, I found it a little bit lacking. Like, it just kind of, you know, like, it just didn't connect. It was like it felt like he was playing a role too much. Like, I wanted it to feel more natural. But aside from the three of them, I think the casting was fantastic. And as much as we have talked about it, regardless of the motivation or how it came to be, the special effects were phenomenal.
Absolutely.
You know, like, you know, in the second movie in the first trilogy, Nightcrawler's teleporting was really well done. It was also really well done here. It led to a lot of good stuff. Mm-hmm. Even the initial battle with Angel, when they first kind of meet in that fighting cage or whatever, you know, the way that they did the choreography and the special effects for that, while it was limited in the movie, when you did see it, it looked great. And again, I'll reference the Beast versus Psylocke fight.
Yeah.
You know, they were all really well done. The special effects were fantastic. There was nothing that really looked like, oh man, that just sticks out like a sore thumb. Like, everything was done very well from a special effects point of view. Just needed that story to gel it together.
For sure. Or
Or if you don't have story, replace it with more action.
yeah, you can have a 300.
I'm fine with either or, to be perfectly
You know what
honest.
though? I agree with you. There's that fight with Nightcrawler and Angel.
Yeah.
Then there's the fight where Wolverine gets like released, and essentially the final fight where they all kind of
Gang up on...
like, well, not even gang up, but there's like where they kind of break off and Beast fights Psylocke and Angel fights Nightcrawler again, right? Like where they kind of separate and go into like little pockets of fighting again. But anyways, we've said what we had to say. Guys, give me a score and a final thoughts. Who wants to go first?
I'd go with a 6 out of 10. I think it's a pretty good movie. I would recommend it to comic book fans, action fans, definitely fans of special effects because they're very good. I don't think it would have too much for people outside of that. I don't think it's a universal movie. And I would say that probably X-Men fans that get turned off by lore discrepancies won't like this one as much. But I thought it was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I'm also going with 6. For me, it would actually get a 5. I would say it's completely like mediocre down the middle. But I give it a +1 for Quicksilver. Just like his one-liners, the scene, just his character in general gives me a +1 on that whole score.
I'm going to give the movie a 4 out of 10.
Whew.
Below average, in my opinion. If I could somehow break away from my brain and not be an X-Men purist and into the lore, I could maybe give it a 5 or a 6. But all of the issues that I've recounted and all of the issues with lore that I haven't gotten into, it's not necessarily that I'd say don't watch the movie, but it would be so specific who I recommend it to,
Fair enough.
that it has to lose points. You know, if you can watch it, you know, like at a buddy's house on Netflix, maybe when the Marvel Netflix deal goes through,
Yep.
it doesn't cost you anything, then I'd say check it out. But other than that, you know, it's really tough for me to find who to recommend this movie to. The only people that I guess I could really recommend this movie to is if there is anybody out there alive who liked Last Stand, this movie will blow your mind. But if you thought Last Stand was bad, you'll still think this one's bad, but you'll be like, okay, well, there is something that's, better than Last Stand. That's it.
Fair enough.
And
Anyways.
as it sticks, third movies suck.
Third movies suck.
Third movies suck.
Didn't Gene even make like some comment about how
That's why I
third
brought
movies
it
suck?
up.
Yeah,
Right?
okay.
Like, and it's just like you have no idea the irony of that statement. Anyway, so again, don't go to the theater to see this one. Don't spend your money on it. If you're a big fan, check it out when you can on, like, say, Netflix. Until next time, this has been Pixel Opinions. Live in the real world. Play in a pixel one. Hey, did you like that video? If you did, be sure to let us know by clicking the like button and leaving a comment. If you want to be first in line for any new content, be sure to subscribe to our channel and then hit up our Facebook page. The link's in the description below to see what's coming up next.